Welcome to Dog Training Bytes, the show where canine professionals share their key takeaways, big aha moments, and hardest lessons learned from working with dogs. I'm Mattison, certified dog trainer and behavior consultant, and dogs are my life. Every day I get to coach guardians and other trainers into a deeper understanding of canine behavior. But let's face it, sometimes dog training really bites. And that's okay, because when it does, we learn a lot. This podcast is all about sharing the lessons learned from experience, because the stories of when it got tough or when we made a mistake, that's when we learn the lessons worth learning. And it's time we share those with the world. I'll be talking to dog trainers and other pet professionals about times that working with dogs, well, bit. Not literally. Maybe literally. What's most important here on this show, what did they walk away with? What did they learn? How did it shape their approach today? Welcome to Dog Training Bytes, the show where pet professionals share personal lessons that you won't find in any textbook. Today, I'm speaking with Sharon Vincuilla. Sharon is the founder of Human Canine Collaborative, a licensed occupational therapist, a co-regulation coach, and a dog behavior consultant with a doctorate in occupational therapy. With over 16 years in dog training and behavior consulting and a background in community-based mental health, Sharon specializes in trauma recovery, dog behavior modification, and trauma-informed animal-assisted interventions. She brings extensive experience in public safety, dog bite prevention, and animal-assisted therapy, supporting neurodivergent individuals in building skills for co-regulation and somatic consent. Sharon also co-hosts the Happy Dog, Happy Human podcast, which explores the intersection of human mental health and our relationships with dogs, and includes personal stories, surprising realizations, and practical co-regulation tips. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to the show. I am so excited for today.
Hi, Mattison. Thank you so much for having me here and for just really welcoming me in a way that I feel like my needs are met for being able to really be present in this conversation for you.
I think you have been an example for me and for many others about advocating for your own needs, not just for us as humans and for our dogs. And so I think that's, again, a really important piece of this. And I know we have some questions and some topics to get into, but something that we wanted to do together first was to take a couple of grounding breaths. And so I know this is something that you do on your podcast. And I think it's so important to take these pauses, these conscious pauses. So is that something that you would feel comfortable guiding us through really quick to just come together and really set the stage here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not always, but I'm learning to always ask for this when I start a conversation with somebody else, because there can be so much energy when you first come together with someone, especially when you're looking forward to seeing them. And if we don't pause and let that settle, then sometimes the conversation can just run away with us and then you lose touch with yourself. So,
and I can absolutely feel that energy, and I'm the type of person that will get swept away in it, and I'll start talking faster and I'll just get really, but you're right. I think it's helpful to just come back down a little bit before we dive into personal stories. So do you have a process that you like to normally go through here?
Yes. I like to start by getting comfortable in my seat if you're sitting down. But if you're walking right now or standing up in some way, that's also fine. But just take note of your body and get comfortable in your body, however that is for you. And then I like to put one hand on my belly and one hand on my heart. That's helpful for me to just connect with myself. But if your hands are more comfortable doing something else, then that is fine. And I like to do 3 breath cycles, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And we'll make the exhale out through the mouth a little bit slower and longer than the inhale.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So go ahead and breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And last one, in through your nose. And out through your mouth.
It's so powerful and so helpful. And I don't know if this is part of the story that you brought today, but I could probably talk for a long time with you about breath and the through lines for humans and dog behavior and breathing and how significant that is in behavior. But that may or may not be the story for today. And I know we have other things to talk about, but thank you, Sharon, so much for bringing that to me and to the show and for allowing it to be something that we're sharing with others. And maybe at the end of the show, you can talk about just some other times when that might be helpful for pet parents or pet pros to really take that time. But really, what I want to ask about first is Muggins. Can you tell the dog people out there about Muggins, please?
Yes, absolutely. Muggins is the dog who I live with currently. And Muggins is a almost 4-year-old hound shepherd pitty mix. And Muggins was originally a shelter pup. So my partner and I found Muggins in early 2021. We were dogless. We had been dogless for several years, but we were always around dogs because when we lived in Los Angeles, we did board and train out of our home. So we always had wonderful dogs with us, but we didn't have our own dog in our family for 3 or 4 years, 4 years probably. So we had just moved to New York, and it was like we were just coming out of the first COVID winter. And we were in between jobs and had time. So we were like, let's bring a dog to the home. And so we weren't like really sure what that was going to look like. We thought about fostering at first, but the local rescue group we were trying to foster with, the foster kept falling through. And so I happened to find Muggins on Instagram. And Muggins was 3 months old at the time and had been in the shelter for too long already. Yeah. Shelters are not designed for dogs to live at, and especially puppies. So Muggins had 2 litter mates and they were adopted out pretty quickly, but Muggins was having trouble. And so when I inquired with the shelter, they said that Muggins had a bite history already. And so was really having a hard time, really liked meeting people, but was biting everybody and everything. And so I knew that my partner and I had the skills to be able to help a dog like this. And so we were like, yeah, let's check him out. Let's go out and meet him. We did. And Muggins, right from the start, was just like this little bundle of energy, so inquisitive. They really wanted to like say hello and explore everything and look around, find out everything that was going on. And I could just see this puppy was just so stressed in their body. They were losing hair around the eyes, and they had this look of alertness, constant alertness all of the time, and would do the type of thing where anything moving around them, they would bite or grab onto, like normal puppy behavior of exploring with the mouth, but overcharged really to the max. I would move my hand and they would be grabbing onto my sleeve, or we would walk by them, they would grab onto the shoes or the pant legs, and all of this. And so just really dysregulated. Yeah. So we decided to adopt Muggins anyway. Of course. And the shelter that Muggins was at was 3 hours from our home. And even though it was March, there happened to be a snowstorm that day. And so it was just the start of our relationship was like trying to get home in a snowstorm with this new puppy who we didn't know. And we just had to try to figure it out. Miraculously, Muggins did not have any accidents in the car, even though it took us 4 hours to get home. Wow. Yeah, right from the start, they just had incredible communication skills, just so clear if you know what to look for. And I was like fortunate that I did know what to look for. And so I was just watching them on the way home, and they would just very deliberately go from kind of interacting with me to sitting and staring out the window. And then I would know, okay, we need to pull over and go outside. Yeah. So it was just that we started building this attunement with each other right from the start. And that was so helpful. And things got better and worse at the same
As they
time.
do, as they do.
We got to know each other and we started to get into a routine, but also Muggins grew very quickly and was under socialized and was like really craving interaction with both dogs and other humans and just like didn't know what to do with himself, really wanted to explore everything, really wanted to sniff a lot and understand like where is everything, what is that, what's over there, wants to get close to things to investigate, but had this body that was just growing and overpowering me
Yeah.
and my partner like really quickly. So it got super overwhelming on walks, and there were a lot of struggles in the beginning with that.
Yeah. Do you feel that you noticed any like physical growing pain symptoms? I think about that when we see dogs go through such accelerated growth in months. And I'm like, "Ooh," I was a early developing kid, so I remember growing pains. I've been this height since I was 11.
Mhm.
And so I remember those growing pains. And I just think about teething and physically growing and how much more accelerated that is for dogs and how much that must hurt.
Mhm.
Question mark, be uncomfortable? I know we don't have a test for pain, but I don't know. Did you think at that time, as you were in it, my dog might be physically uncomfortable, physically in pain from the growing pains?
Mm. I don't remember like thinking about growing pains specifically, but that's such a great question with any large breed puppy to consider, like what
Right.
feeling in their body, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're going to experience something that a smaller breed dog will not with
Yeah.
the just, again, pure growth and what that
Mhm.
takes and how taxing that must be on the body.
Yeah, exactly.
I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about this either, which is why I'm just like, huh, yet
Uh-huh.
another thing to consider.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't notice like any lameness or favoring limbs or like any signs of like joint or like muscular pain or bone pain.
He was just a little awkward in his body.
Super awkward. Yeah. Had these huge feet that everyone would say, "Oh my goodness, is he going to be a Great Dane or something?" And my partner and I would be like, "Please no, please not a Great Dane."
For
Like
the
something
record,
a little
Muggins had
smaller.
not engaged until I said maybe they were awkward, lifted their
Mhm.
head. Excuse me.
Yeah, Muggins is sleeping on the bed behind me, so you can see it in the camera. So Muggins did have a lot of discomfort in other ways, though, specifically digestively,
Mm,
which was really interesting right off the bat because like Muggins liked sharing food with me and like eating what I was eating. Part of that was, I think, in the car on the way home from the shelter, like Muggins needed help just focusing and
yeah.
keeping busy. And I happened to have an egg sandwich. So I would share a little bit of my egg. And then Muggins really liked scrambled eggs after that for 2 months, wanted scrambled eggs every morning. It's like, okay, I will give you that. But Muggins had a hard time, was one of those dogs that would have a hard time eating new foods that they weren't familiar with,
Okay.
or eating on walks was really challenging, like where you need them to be eating the most. That was really challenging. And then sometimes, probably at least once a day, we would put a bowl of food down and then Muggins would pretend to bury it instead of eating it. Yeah.
It's a tough one because it's at first you get this, oh, like that's cute, that's cool. And then you're like, what's
Yeah.
driving that? But why? And then you have to
Mhm.
ask and figure out because it can be an indication of just some type of genetic natural drive. But I think more often than not, there's some type of indication there.
Mhm. Yeah, I really wondered so much about this because I was going back and forth between, is this stress related or is there something Muggins doesn't like about the food?
Mhm,
Um, and then it would cause a lot of stress for me because I'm
mhm.
like, anytime you're in a parenting role, one of the main things about parenting is feeding the one that you're caring for. And if
Yeah.
feeding is difficult, then I think we take that on so much and blame ourselves so much and worry about like, how are we going to make sure that this being gets the food and the nutrients that they need? So
So hard, let alone train. And I think for a lot of people, they can't even fathom a dog that would reject food. Can't
right?
even
Mhm.
imagine a world where a dog wouldn't take the bacon or
Yeah.
something like that. But then I think you're absolutely right. You have a dog who is refusing food, who can't eat in certain environments,
Mhm.
who I've had clients that have gone on days-long hunger strikes related to their fear and dysregulation, and dogs can become really unwell when they're not eating properly.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a lot of weight and responsibility because we are stewards. We are stewards over these creatures, so we do have a responsibility. Yeah, that's another one that has the emotional side on in addition to the physical.
Yeah, exactly. It was really emotional. And there were times when I just wanted to get out the treat jar and put some treats on the food and be like, okay, now you can eat. Let me help you. Or sometimes if I picked up some of the food from the bowl and hand fed it to Muggins a couple of bites, then they would get started on their own.
Mhm.
But then I would realize that I'm doing that because I'm responding to my stress and anxiety about this situation.
Mhm.
And the behavior isn't getting better. So I don't think I'm actually addressing the root cause of whatever this is.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's such a good point. How
Yeah.
did that sort of evolve and progress from there?
We did a number of things. We switched the food. So we went off kibble pretty quickly because I feel like fresh food is just better quality. So we switched to a fresh food variety. But then we had trouble with that because some of the recipes, we would switch around to some different recipes, and some of them were okay. Muggins would eat them most of the time, but still not 100%. And then others, it was like, no, that's not quite right. And then we still had the issue of treats on walks. So it wasn't just about switching the food. It was also about the amount of food that I was giving at one time. I realized that Muggins really got overwhelmed by having a full bowl of food. So we would
Yeah.
just do half and then half more a little bit later. I taught Muggins how to ask for meals. That was a huge part of it too, because the appetite was really related to the biting.
Mm,
Because I noticed that Muggins would get more bitey, if you will, that biting behavior would increase when they were hungry.
yeah.
And so making sure that Muggins could tell me when they were hungry, but not so that they didn't have to wait till it was like extreme hunger and really not feeling well. That
Yeah.
was a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And then we also consulted a nutritionist who helped us to really find what is the right amount of food, what types of food can we feed, and can we make a recipe specifically for Muggins that has the types like of textures and varieties of foods that actually Muggins likes.
I think it's a fairly common, I don't want to call it a mistake, but I think it's fairly common for folks to accidentally overfeed their dogs because, especially with kibble, because the feeding instructions on the bag are likely
Mm.
to encourage you to feed more than is necessary for your dog because that means you have to buy more. So
Mhm.
I normally suggest to look at the calorie content and
Mhm.
then consult either a nutritionist or find someone who can tell you what is your dog's ideal weight and what the daily caloric intake is to get to that ideal weight, and then basing what you feed them based off of that, as opposed to the feeding guidelines. More often than not, I find that we are overfeeding a little bit.
Yeah, that's such a great recommendation. And you're right. Some of that recommendation on the bag is totally marketing, and we need to investigate a little bit deeper in order to know what our dogs really need.
And then I think it also makes it easier to adjust based on treats and things like that, because treats are often really calorie dense unless you're buying something that is 1 calorie portion, which are my fave. And that way it just makes it easier to adjust based on how much you're treating them. And also this is that time of year where if you are not as active in the colder months, I think it's something that I will forget to do if I am not going to be outside as much, and to
Mm.
reduce the calories if you're not as active because your dog doesn't have to put on winter weight.
Yeah, that's so important. Like we adjust our activity levels based on the seasons, and so nutritional needs are adjusted as well.
Do we have a separate story to dig into today, or is Muggins the theme of the day?
Ooh, that's a great question. I do have a separate story, and this separate story is about a dog who I learned a lot from, and then was able to implement with Muggins some of the things that I learned from this other dog.
I love it. I'm ready. I'm settling in.
All right. So this other dog's name is Emerson. And this is a story from when I lived back in California and was doing board and train out of my home. And I had a relationship with a local rescue. And they called me one day and said they had this dog that was adopted out for 1 week and was getting returned. And they didn't, this was a foster based rescue, and they didn't have any foster or any place for this dog to go. And also there was a bite. And so they wanted me to evaluate the dog. And then if I was willing, then they wanted me to take the dog for board and train and help them find a home for the dog. So this dog was like an 18-month-old lab. I don't know if you're familiar with this variety of lab, but it's the type of lab that is more white than golden and like really big, like real blocky head, like the English variety.
English, yep.
Yeah, super handsome, like the pink nose even. So cute, so cute.
Was this pre-Muggins?
This is pre-Muggins,
okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I had another dog in my home that for board and train already, a little Cavalier King Charles. And so I was like, I could only take this dog if everybody's going to be safe. We set up the time for the owner to bring the dog for the evaluation. And the dog was like super insecure seeming and really stressed, not really interacting with me much, really interested in smells, pulling on leash a lot. Didn't really interact with the owner much either. They'd only known each other a week, and it was obviously pretty stressful. So there's a lot that I didn't know, but Emerson did fine with the Cavalier King Charles. And so that was good. And he was like crate trained and able to like be petted and things like that. And so I was like, okay, everything seems like pretty okay. I asked a lot more about the bite. It was like the situation where there was a bruise, but no broken skin. And
what was the context of the bite?
With the owner, it was like he had been touching the dog around the neck in some way. Yeah, it was like he had just tore the shirt, bruised the arm, didn't puncture it. And the owner had been like, just said he was just petting him near the neck. So I felt like that was some information, but there was definitely a lot more information I would have loved to know about that. But sometimes you just get
what you get. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things I remember about that day is we were talking outside for a little bit, and then we brought Emerson inside, and the owner was like backing toward the door, ready to go. Really did not want to take the dog back with him. Yeah, exactly. He was like, "So you're good? You'll take him? Okay, bye." And like close the door. And I was like, "Oh, what do I not know?" You know,
that was a swift exit stage left.
Super swift. Yeah. As soon as that door closed, Emerson started barking. And this such an intense bark, so intense. It was like I thought my skull was fracturing. It was so loud and at this pitch that was just painful.
Yeah.
I remember my partner was like down the hall in the bedroom with the door closed with a pillow over his head, just like trying to like, what are we going to do with this barking? And it was really interesting because Emerson didn't bark at like sounds. He wasn't barking at sounds or things that he heard or anything.
He was making noise. He wanted you. He was trying to communicate, and it was painful.
Yeah. It was painful. Yeah, it was really painful. And so I started to think about, what is he feeling? What kind of pain is he feeling in his body? And it seemed to be like the barking would happen once he went in the crate, like when the owner left, the door closed, right? Something about like separation from the caregivers. Mm-hmm. And then when Emerson was out of the crate, it was just like chaos at first. Like any naughty dog behavior that you can think of, Emerson would do it.
18-month-old labs are like definition teenager of, and what, big boy, 70, 80 pounds? How big?
Oh,
big boy?
Yeah, at least 80. Mm-hmm.
Chaos and like a linebacker causing chaos.
Exactly. Like this, it was so interesting because I would watch him and I would be interacting with him. And then he would like turn and go stick his head in the garbage or go grab the shoes or jump on me or grab my arm. It was like there was this dysregulation related to, I don't know how to interact with you. And also maybe I need something. And I could tell that there was something about these naughty behaviors that seemed intentional. Emerson was using those behaviors to get attention, and it seemed like
Yes.
that's how he had learned to get.
Mischievous,
Yeah,
connection-seeking behavior that is
yeah,
incredibly easy for dogs to ritualize.
yeah, because it's so effective. Like they get attention when
It
they do
works
that,
great. Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
don't get as much attention when they're just laying there being a good boy on the floor.
Oh, man. Such a classic example of it's just a misunderstanding of how to
Mhm,
interact with your dog to reinforce the right behaviors. I have a client
mhm.
right now. I said, if you remember nothing else from working with me, tattoo the phrase, what's rewarded is repeated on your brain from now
Yeah.
until the end of time, and just repeat that over and over again. And because that in and of
Mhm,
itself can change the way you interact with your dog and will then
mhm.
change the way your dog interacts with the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Come back in 2 weeks for the rest of Sharon's story and to dig into Emerson's behavioral journey. Dog Training Bytes was created, produced, and edited by Mattison Simpson. You can connect with me on Instagram at Dog Training Bytes, that's BYTES, and at Freed by Training. For information on today's guest and resources for help with your dog or dog training education, visit www.dogtrainingbytes.stream. Looking for more? Listen to my other show, Unpacked, a clinical dog training podcast co-hosted by Sailor Jerry the dog trainer and produced by Straight Up Dog Talk LLC.